Welcome back, everyone. Today we have a really exciting interview with two incredible guests. We have Wesley Faulkner and PJ Hagerty. Wesley is the head of community at SingleStore, and PJ Hagerty is the head of developer relations at Mattermost, and they are also two of the multiple hosts. There's, I think, 4 or 5 hosts at the podcast called Community Pulse, which is an incredible podcast you should all check out. They focus a lot on developer relations, and that was the focus of our conversation today. DevRel, developer evangelism, developer engagement, developer community. There's a lot of terms for these kinds of communities that are focused on connecting with and serving and supporting developer ecosystems. We talk about that, what's the difference between all of those terms, and how the role of developer relations isn't just being someone at a conference wearing the shirt of the product. It isn't just providing a support forum. There's a whole lot of different things that DevRel teams do. We talk about how the world of developer relations has evolved now that developers are in really high demand, especially with the growth of Web3 and countless projects for people to get involved in, and lots of developer-facing products that are vying for their attention, how to grab developers' attention and engage them in thoughtful ways. PJ and Wesley are two longtime professionals in this space. They are deeply experienced and talk about it with lots of guests on their podcast, so we're able to go really deep into this ecosystem, and I learned a lot about DevRel that I didn't know before. So for those of you who are interested to learn more about that world, this is the episode for you. We'll dive in just a minute. I also want to give a shout out to another reviewer on the podcast. So every week we are going to shout out somebody who dropped a review on Apple Podcasts. If you do that, you might get shout out in a future episode. Again, these reviews help us in a huge way to get the word out to more people, help us rank higher on Apple, so we really appreciate it. Today's reviews from Lynn Abbey Johnson. She said, compelling community conversations. This podcast is another step in the direction of generating global transformation in the realm of community building. It is much needed for bringing our world closer together and healing what is and who is hurting across all boundaries. Lynn, really appreciate you. Lynn's been a long-time supporter of my work and the CMX community, and an amazing contributor in the community industry. So I know Lynn cares very deeply about community on that broad global level, and that review really means a lot. Thank you, Lynn. So without further ado, let's dive into today's interview. PJ, Wesley, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad
Thanks
to be
for
here.
having us.
Of course. Y'all are community podcast hosts as well. So we got the gathering of community podcast hosts here. For those of you who don't listen to it, you should definitely go check out Community Pulse. Lots of great You've been doing it for a long time. How long have you been doing that podcast now?
I believe it's 5 years.
Wow.
I'm new, so I'm just over a year.
Yeah, Wesley's just over a year, but I think the podcast itself has been going on for about 5 years. Started by Jason Hand and Mary Thangval. I joined after, I think, the 6th or 7th episode. And we just wanted to make it more awesome, so we added SJ Morris, and then last year we added Wesley, just to have, more fun, intelligent, thoughtful, thought-provoking voices on the mic.
Yeah, and we're gonna do Voltron costumes, so they needed another person.
Exactly. we went, in order to get a full 5 lions, you need 5 people. I'm just saying.
It's the minimum requirement, I think. That's a really cool model for a podcast that I haven't really seen before. How does that work? Do you each get to bring in your own guests? Does everyone participate in their own episodes? How do you distribute the ownership of the podcast?
Well, we meet every week, even though the podcast is bi-monthly, and we decide what the topics are going to be, what's on the rundown. And we can have hosts that are closer to the specific subject matter chime in on those that make sense. And sometimes some of us bow out, and sometimes we're all on it. So it all depends on schedules and how they line up and subject matter.
Yeah, I think it also, we all have kind of different experiences coming into this. Is DevRel is a continuum. I like to say it's not a spectrum; it's a continuum of jobs and experiences and things that people do, and it's changing all the time. So each of us brings a different perspective that might be pertinent to the subject that we're touching on, might not be, but it could be that well, I have experience speaking. I know the person that Wesley's looking for the topic that he has, so I can connect the people, but I might not necessarily be on the episode. And we kind of do it in a very, it's a communal fashion. Some of us have certain jobs. Wesley is very focused on kind of the social media and LinkedIn end of it. I do a lot of the editing and things like that. We all release the podcast at different points in time. We've all edited the podcast at different points in time. We all do guest work. We've all written scripts. So it kind of depends on who's needed for what job at that point and who has the cycles to do it.
Love it. So it's a true community effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We're like a
practice what we
sub-community.
preach. Yeah.
That's right.
Meta.
And a lot of it's focused on Develo. So I think we're gonna have some good conversations around Develo today. Maybe we could just kick off if you could each share, what you're working on. You both work in Develo in your full-time jobs. So can you just share a little bit about your background and the work that you're doing today?
Do you want to go first, Wesley? You want me to go first?
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
So right now, I'm currently the head of community for a startup called SingleStore, which is a database company. I say startup, but I would say it's almost a graduating startup where we just raised a Series F. So we're pretty long in the tooth, and but the developer relations portion is still relatively new. So I was one of the first to join, and we've added 2 developer advocates or evangelists, depending on what side of the pond you're on. Mm-hmm. And my role is to help with building the community, which is right now focused on the forum and the newsletter. And also I'm working on some internal advocacy as well, and starting a ambassador program. With all of that, I'm also pretty much the de facto team lead for the DevRel organization as a whole.
Got it. How big is the DevRel org there? The team?
If you count me, that means there's 3 of us, me and the 2 advocates, and we are augmented with a few contractors here and there, depending on the type of work that we need. We might bring them on temporarily. For instance, AWS reInvent is coming up, and we're going to have some on-site help with some contractors to help with awareness. We also do social, and we have another contractor that's helping with our social outreach and getting things scheduled. We're growing by some other leaps and bounds by adding people to try to tackle some specific issues we have, like forum management, being some moderation, some light work there, and all this stuff takes coordination. So we're bringing on someone to help with coordinating all of our ongoing stuff. So as we grow, having contractors is actually probably like a big portion of our DevRel efforts.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually something I'm seeing more and more commonly is like a community team that's 2-3 people, but then they have this kind of small army of contractors around them, which I think is just the nature of there's a lot of things to be done around communities that you need a lot of different specialists for. And also sometimes community teams just like don't get approved for a head count for full-time employees, but like will get approved for contractor budget. And so it's just like, cool, I'm just going to get a whole lot of contractors to get all this work done.
Yeah, absolutely. And let alone like copywriting, to light editing some posts, and we might actually do our own podcast at one point, and we might need to get some audio editing done, and that's kind of the things that we'll experiment and grow, and then we figure out what sticks.
Love it. Well, you should work with Tom at Fame, who we use. Shout out to Tom, who's going to be listening to this recording when he edits it later. But yes.
Did you say Tom from Fame?
Fame, yeah. Fame.
I believe he said Tom from Fame.
Tom from Fame. Okay,
yes.
Just making sure.
Just making sure you heard me. Love it. Yeah, same here. We work with contractors for our engineering requirements on the community, for content creators, for event organizers, for all sorts of stuff. Awesome. Thanks, Wesley. PJ, what are you working on?
So yeah, currently I'm the head of DevRel at Mattermost, which is an open source communication and collaboration platform for developers. It's pretty straightforward. The platform, everything's open source. We work to bring people together so that they can manage their projects, chat, collaborate, bring in things like GitHub and GitLab right there in the chat platform, so they don't have to do a lot of context switching all over there. And I work with a team of individuals who kind of, it's kind of like one of those, A team situations where it's like, I've got my content writers, I've got my community managers, I've got my, developer marketing folks. And I kind of coordinate all that as well as doing the main developer advocate duties of, going out and being the face of the company and shaking babies and kissing hands and stuff like that. Beyond that, I also was the founder of Devrelate.io,
Yes.
which was one of the first ever DevRel as a service companies. Delivering, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, contracting, being able to help with events, being able to help by providing speakers, mentoring speakers, providing content, things like that, as people needed it over time. And I opened that up in about 2017. So it's been going pretty strong for 4 years.
I love it.
Do you do anything around code of conduct at all?
As a matter of fact, I do. I came up with a concept where, as you know, event organizers, they generally ask you to agree to a code of conduct, but it's very difficult for them to keep track of violations or reports. It's usually, one person saying to another person such and such happened or something occurred. So I developed an app called Call of Conduct, which you can see at callofconduct.com. It's in beta. And the way it works is organizers send a message out to everyone, and you can anonymously report code of conduct violations. The organizers then get a push notification on their mobile phone that something needs to be taken care of, and they can take it from there, after which they have a report of the occurrence, what happened, who it happened with. They have a step-by-step thing that they can go through to make sure that everybody's safe and secure. And that's something I've been working on for a little while now. It's pretty cool. Thank you for reminding me of that, Wesley, because I've actually been talking about it for like the last 2 weeks. But we're just getting into beta, and so if people want to try it out, they can get in touch with me.
That's incredible. That sounds really cool. Is that specifically for events or could it be online communities as well?
At the moment, it's for meetups and conferences.
Cool.
I have some ideas on how to spread that out to community moderation and maybe even like HR or student functions on a campus. But we're not there yet. We're still trying to make sure that we have our feet under us before we start running.
Totally. I mean, it's definitely a need. And we see it in online communities where it's like, all right, here's a code of conduct that no one reads. And then maybe they read it when they have a problem. They're like, wait, what was the code of conduct? And then the reporting structure is usually like DM the admins or something, right? Like it's usually pretty scrappy and disorganized, which just reduces the safety and the actual effectiveness of the code of conduct, which is really important. So I could see that working for online communities just as easily, but definitely for conferences and events as well. As a conference organizer, we always have our code of conduct and we have our policy. Honestly, I'm not sure that we've ever had really a lot of, I don't know if we ever had any reports, and that's probably in part because there wasn't a good system for people to report it.
Well, that's kind of the other side of it too, is when something happens to you, if you're, say, a woman or someone from an underrepresented group, and there's like, some horrible language using it, you're harassed in some way. The last thing you want to do is then go find someone who you may or may not know that well, that just happens to be wearing a staff t-shirt and confront them and say, hey, this happened to me. And you don't know this person. You don't know how it's going to go. So here's an opportunity for you. All you have to do is pick up your phone, click a link, and fill out a form. You can do it at your pace, at your leisure, at your level of comfort. And you don't have to confront anyone. So there's no like fear of reciprocation or anything like that. I think it makes everybody feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I love it. Well, sign me up as a beta user.
Will do.
All right, done. You got a customer out of this podcast. So you're already worth your time.
Sweet. All right, this is good. So that's all from us here.
Damn it. Wait, let's get you more customers. Okay, so so both of you have been working in DevRel for a long time. I would love to actually just like first define DevRel, because already in this interview so far, we've used several terms interchangeably. Wesley, you kind of said tongue-in-cheek, depending on which side of the pond you're at. But I think like it's used pretty widely, whether it's DevRel, developer advocacy, developer community. PJ, you mentioned developer marketing. Are all of these things the same thing, or are they different things?
I'll take that one if I could.
Go for it.
All right. Yes. Yeah. The answer is yes and no. So it's almost like
the
what is
ultimate
the
DevRel
best
answer. It depends.
like what is the best programming language for a modern web application? And you can find people who will fight tooth and nail and die on that hill and they all have different answers, right? And so a lot of it is depending on your needs. Even DevRel itself, there's still discussions of where's the best place to put DevRel, but I think it's almost like a grab bag of different things. And so it almost, if you squint and turn your head, the answer is yes to almost everything. But if you boil it down, DevRel is the process of a company speaking to the community, and then the community speaking to the company, and then making that a virtual cycle so that that is as healthy as possible. So keeping everything in balance, meaning that there's adequate communication to the community of developers, and the developers, once they feel heard, then produce a response back to the company. And then if it's healthy, the company responds in a healthy manner back to community.
Now, when you say like speaking to the community speaking back to you, it sounds a little bit like what you're describing is there's this community of developers out there in the world, or many communities of developers out there in the world. And you as a DevRel team, you're creating those lines of communication between your company and those people. But is there also an element of you have, branded community or an owned community, or like your own community of developers who are working on your platform? Or do you still see that as kind of an external community?
I think
there's internal DevRel. Yeah, take it, PJ.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a line that you have internal DevRel where you're dealing with the developers who are internal to your organization, which could include outside contributors. At Mattermost, we have several contributors who contribute directly to the Mattermost project because it's open source, but they don't actually work for Mattermost. But we consider them internal contributors along with our dev team. And then there's the outside community, the external community, if you will. And in my mind, like the big thing there is like your job is not just to be catalyst, not just to be voice, but also to be participant. You should be a member of the external communities you wish to interact with. And I'm using kind of the royal you. So, but your team should in some way be involved. Wesley works at SingleStore, which is, very data focused. So they should be a part of a lot of database communities, database administrators, database, developers, things like that, because that's the people that want that product, that want to look at that. But it goes a little bit beyond like developers and consumers and users to anyone with any kind of interest in the things that you're doing. You need to be the voice to say, hey, there are lots of languages out there. So maybe we shouldn't just focus on the fact that maybe, we use Python or we use Ruby. So we should only talk to those communities when we go out there. We develop a tool that's going to help everyone. We should talk to everyone. And the more you do that, the more you participate, the more you go out to the community, the more you're going to create value that you can then bring back internally and say, hey, I was talking to this person. They thought Jamstack was the answer on web development. Let's talk about how we can integrate with that. Because it is a very popular option. But that's just an example.
I guess part
and
of
on
the
other side of that, internally, sorry, go, David.
I guess part of the distinction that I'm interested in as well is, are you are going out to, for SingleStore's example, data communities and being a representative of SingleStore out there in those communities, but then are you also building the SingleStore developer community, which is SingleStore branded events, SingleStore branded community spaces where developers are coming to you as a community center rather than you going out to existing communities?
Yes to all. So we do have owned and we do participate in others. Depending on the size of an org, like a startup that is earlier in their journey, they may lean towards participating in other communities rather than trying to create their own in their own branded space because of the size and volume. But we've been around for over a decade. And so we have a real product that is used in production where people come to ask questions and to get information about best usage of this. But I also wanted to say that the external part is what people see, but we also in DevRel do the internal part, which work with project managers. We work with documentation teams. We work internally to make sure that the feedback that we get from a functionality standpoint to like a list of features that need to be added or bugs that need to be fixed, that is being addressed, and that we are the voice of those externally, internally. And when we say communities, we don't actually mean one to one, and we don't mean one to many. We mean that and everything in between. So we'll do podcasts that will reach faceless people that we don't even know are there. And then we'll also go to a meetup of 5 or 10 people and have a discussion with the people in the audience. So, and I mentioned I'll be at AWS reInvent. I'll be at the booth talking to people as they come through and actually having conversations about what people's impressions are, just to make sure that as a embed to the community, that I understand their wants and needs, and that when I'm in the office at a conference table, then I'm bringing those with me.
So that's a lot of hats to wear, right? If you compare developer-facing companies to, other companies, consumer companies or B2B SaaS companies, things like that, you'd have a marketing team who's doing the podcasts and the content, and you'd have kind of like a product team who's collecting that feedback and insight and bringing it in. And the community team is focused on like connecting customers to each other, and providing support, providing success, providing, growth by driving these kinds of community events and stuff. But in DevRel, it sounds like you have even more all under the umbrella. There's, if I'm understanding kind of the pillars, there's putting on the hat of I'm an advocate. So I'm going to go out there to all these other events and communities and be the representative of the brand to kind of spread awareness and build trust with people in other communities. There's the owned community pillar of great. Now you're bought in. Maybe you already started building on our platform, or you're a user of our product. So we're going to build community specifically around our product where you can get support and connect with each other. And then another pillar is internally taking the insight from the industry and taking the insight from your community and working with your product team to apply all of that to the product roadmap and what you're building. Is that right? And wow, is that a lot?
I think that is right, and I think that you're right. It is a lot. I think that's why when I started off doing DevRel, it wasn't even called that. There was no term for it. We were just a community team, but we were the first team to say, hey, like this isn't something one person should try to handle. But even in those early years, and this is 11, 12 years ago. In those early years, often you had one developer advocate who was expected to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And add on to that, interface with the marketing team to make sure that the messaging was correct. And then, add to that writing some of the code that was going into the main product, especially at small startups. Like the expectations were so ridiculously high. And I'm really enjoying seeing the advent of the DevRel team or community team. Early on, there were a couple companies that were doing that right off the bat, like Twilio. Twilio to me is always the shining example, and it's because they do kind of put together these teams, these Voltron-like teams of, hey, I've got, 5 or 6, five mini teams inside of one team. So maybe not the Lion Voltron, but remember the old car Voltron? They had like 18 different pieces. That's what the modern DevRel team should look like. You should have content writers that have expertise in different areas. You should have community managers who have expertise in, interfacing with the community in forums or social media, or focusing specifically on one-on-one conversations and moderation in all of the things that you're doing. You should have a few dev advocates who can go out and speak to different communities, because there's one thing that kind of stuck about what you said is the older companies who maybe don't have dev tools or aren't technology facing. Kind of have, community managers that work with users, and then they have like marketing teams and product teams. I don't think that should really be the case anymore. One of the clients that I worked with at DevRelate was a large bank. They're like the third largest bank in the world. Doesn't matter what their name is. But I gave you enough clues. Everybody listening out there, you should be able to put it together. But they realized that like they needed to treat their API group like a small startup. They needed to act like they were building dev tools, even though they were a bank. Every company now is a technology company. Every company now should have a DevRel team. They should have advocates or evangelists at their booths helping to talk to people who work in technology, because I don't care if you're, part of grocery store, or there's technology there. There's teams that are important. I go to events now and I see things like Target or Walmart. They have whole tech teams, huge developer teams. And maybe it's just that they're looking to hire people in technology, or maybe it's that they're looking to find out what's the latest thing going on in the world of technology. Doesn't matter who you are. You're a tech company. You have developers. You need communities of developers to support you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seeing a lot of parallels there with the broader community profession. If I think back to my earliest roles, I remember my first job as a community manager, literally as a startup of 4 people, I was number 4, and there were 3 developers and me. So I literally did everything that wasn't coding, social media, PR, copywriting, like all of it. And that wasn't too dissimilar even when I joined larger companies of wearing a lot of those hats all at once. But what we are seeing now is as community teams are growing, getting more budget, getting more buy-in, we're seeing the ability to specialize. And we're seeing community operations specialists, right? People who look at how do you automate a lot of these processes and track all the data around community better. We're seeing people who specialize more in events or online community. And I think in DevRel, it's cool to hear how it's breaking down by, are you focused more on being out there as a public face, as an advocate? Are you focused more on providing kind of support channels and own community spaces? Are you focused more internally? But how do you kind of incorporate all of those people together as one team?
Yeah, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's where you see the. Sorry, Wesley. You go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I'm already seeing this. Like, I know New Relic have developer advocates that only do live streaming. When I was at MongoDB, we had developer advocates that only focused on startups and accelerators, for instance. And so there's that specialization for well-funded companies that are able to do this and do this well. But yeah, as you go back and as you go back, that it's going to be more consolidated into one person. But as you go forward, hopefully we'll have more specialties where people can participate.
Well, I was going to say too. I think that in some ways, if you look at even in the startup world, a lot of the VCs and investors have caught on to the value of having DevRel teams, or at the very least, a dev advocate. Like they're starting to get that that's a thing, and I've always been of the philosophy that if the VCs have caught on to it, then this is normcore. Like this is this is just what you're supposed to be doing anyway. Because if VCs get it, you're one step below. This is tradition.
Well,
This
why
is the
is
way
the
we've always
VC
done it.
doing
Inbox
that?
agrees with you.
Why
Was
why
that
why are
Wesley?
VCs investing in DevRel?
I think they know that without tech communities, they can't continually support the process of building whatever the product is that you're building, regardless if it's a dev focused tool or not. I think that a lot of times, like, it's a situation where we look at how engineering teams get hired and how people do have a tendency to jump jobs every 2 to 3 years nowadays, either because they're bored or they want different growth or whatever it is. And, I don't hold that against anyone. I think that's kind of the way you should do it. That's the new model. But in doing that, that means you have to constantly be interacting with the community. You constantly need to be creating a pipeline because you never know where your next new hire is going to come from. And it could be that, DevRel to me is like the new conduit, like talking to a dev advocate, someone who understands, can be the face of the company and all that jazz. Someone who can have that conversation and communicate what it's like to work there might be the person who's ready to create your next engineering role and find that person.
Another reason why I think VCs are into it is because that feedback loop is extremely crucial in product development. A lot of people have heard fail fast from the tech community, and that's because you put something out there, you see how it goes, you get the feedback, and then you iterate and you make another version. With developer relations, you're able to shorten that cycle considerably. I don't think that any of us have not seen someone spend a whole bunch of money, put a product out there, and then several people respond back with, why would you do this? Or what about that? Why didn't you just do that? In terms of criticizing and just saying like, that was not the smartest thing to do. And then they then have to pivot. If you can get that input early and be able to have those mini focus groups, that large net of people who are able to say, this is what we really want. It's easier to be on the right path faster.
And I just want to clarify, I think that's a good point. And it sounds like what you're describing there, Wesley, is companies who are building tools that developer teams will use. and iterating and testing that product with them. So you're bringing them into that process. You're learning quickly. You have essentially like people to beta test it. Is that right?
I would say any technology product, because DevRel, let's use the Target example. If you are out there in the developer community, there are sometimes you deal with developers who are coding, and there are some developers that are focused on, let's say, UI, UX, or accessibility. There's different developers that work on different technologies, and they all can have input into making your product better, whether or not you are developer focused or not.
Interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe you can follow up on this, PJ, but I actually, as a somewhat outsider in the DevRel world, when I think of DevRel, I think of like the engineer who's coding and like building tools for them, as well as open source communities. Like you worked on, PJ, where you want developers to come contribute to your project or build on the platform. But it sounds like you have a broader kind of definition of engineers in like there's lots of things that developers can contribute to that isn't just like the base level of developing code.
Sure. I think that just the usability factor, because we're all trying to use these tools or use these products, and so it's easy to say, like, if I'm having an issue, and this is sometimes not the best part of dev advocacy, but I can go to Wesley and say, like, hey, I was using SingleStore and I noticed in the interface the word upgrade was spelled with 2 E's. And that's easier than like trying to, if I don't know Wesley as the face, I don't know where I might take that. So I might just be like, I'll just walk away from this product. So there's like value in bringing that in, but like, it's also a conversation where, and we talked about how people in DevRel have many different roles. People who are out in the community also have different roles. They could be a contributor, a user, a consumer, a customer, which is not the same thing as a consumer. Or just someone who casually notices something and wants to bring it to your attention. And that's true regardless of the dev tools or the engineering level of the person. It could be that they're not engineers at all, but they catch on to some spelling errors in our documentation because they just happen to be perusing something because they're big content developers. So we can't limit DevRel to developers or engineers. I think that's a very limiting, and it's unfortunate that we came up with the term DevRel. It was better than what we had, which was nothing. But at the same time, we
still have podcasts, by the way. So if that means anything,
yeah, exactly. We still have podcasts, and nobody's listening to them on iPods. So disappointing. But I had to explain that to my kids at one point in time. They're like, "Why do they call them podcasts?" I was like, "Well, you see, kids, there used to be these things called iPods."
Is that really where podcast came from? Huh.
Yeah, literally, they were broadcasts for iPods. Podcasts.
Good to know.
Yeah. But like it's like, and that's maybe that's something we need to change. But DevRel definitely could use a better term because it's not just for developers anymore.
Well, would it just be called community then? Isn't that like the broader community profession?
Yes, I think that people think community is too broad a term. I don't agree. I think that
something in
was
the
it
middle.
the tech community or the user community or the developer community, that there's always some qualifier there. I think.
So there's something, it still needs to be something related to tech or technical work, just not specifically developers, like anyone who works in tech, whereas community could mean people who buy Nike shoes.
Right, exactly. But, it could be that, you're a developer who buys Nike shoes and you realize that there's a bug on your website and you can't get the new airs.
There's overlap, yeah. Especially these tech-connected shoes, these fancy things they're building today. Can't keep up. Bring back the iPods.
And some people, I mean, I think that what PJ is saying and what I'm saying, we are just like one leg of the elephant, right? There are companies and VCs out there who are like, it's just marketing.
Right.
That's all we do. All we want you to do is get on podcasts, get on shows. We don't care about any information coming back to us. We just want awareness.
Well, it's not even VCs or startups that believe this. Like I at one point worked. I think we both worked for the same company at one point in time, not at the same time, but who their very belief was, hey, all right, put on the T-shirt, go out there, be PJ. It's like I don't even know what that means. Like you just go do talks, write a blog post every once in a while, whatever. Put it on your own blog. We don't care. Just make sure that everyone knows that you work here, and that you're saying things that are completely correct. And that's like,
basically flood the voice of,
Right.
with talking points and flood the channel and all that stuff.
Very, very
create
Guy
noise, not signal.
Kawasaki, Robert Scoble kind of format. Like I remember those guys are two of the evangelists, right? And a lot of DevRel, I think people think of as that. It's the guy or girl with the T-shirt at the conference.
And I have no problem taking on the role of person wearing T-shirt at conference, but understand that's so small a part of what we do. And I know Wesley knows I hate this term, but like our job is to be thought leaders. Yuck, so gross. I want to wash my mouth out, but like that's actually what we do. Part of our job is to like think about what are the next steps. What is the next evolution to what this is, that this tech thing that we do? What, is it NFTs? God, I hope not. But like, what is it? What's important? What matters to these people that are building this world that we're creating in technology? What's important to them? What matters? And how can we communicate that to the companies we work for? And how can we build things that interest them to continue that conversation? I think the best thing Wesley
and that's
said,
just what
said
matters.
Best. We're the catalysts. That's what we do.
Yeah, and not just what matters. We find out what matters most. In some cases.
Oh man.
Oh,
Zing!
All right, Wes, you're off the podcast. PJ and I will take it from here.
All right.
That was good.
Do we have to have the pun conversation again? Do we have to?
Are you wearing the shirt?
I am not wearing my. Wait, are you wearing Are you wearing a SingleStore shirt right now, Wesley?
Me? No.
Okay.
This is actually another podcast.
Make it weird.
All right. Love it. So that I think that is a really interesting distinction and a good thing for people to understand about DevRel, that maybe a bit of a misnomer sometimes. It's broader, and it's definitely not just being the evangelist at events. It's all of the things that go into building and engaging with a community and understanding it and bringing that back into the business to guide the roadmap, to get more buy-in and trust, to plug into the tech zeitgeist in a way. So a few more specific questions. One I hear often: can non-technical people work in DevRel?
So Wesley's nodding his head, but let me. I just want to caveat this. This is very important. If you're working in DevRel, at some point in time, you're not technical. I hate the term "not technical," unless like you're Amish or you live in a third world country where technology has not touched you. You're technical. If you've ever used a smartphone, you're technical. If you've ever figured out email, you're technical. If you know how to set the time on a VCR, you're technical. Stop calling yourself non-technical. That's. Are we allowed to swear? Because that's kind of bullshit.
Yes, this is a swear-safe
like the whole
podcast.
The whole concept of being non-technical is ludicrous. It's gatekeeping. You can say non-engineers. That's fine. But I don't think anyone who works in the modern world, outside of maybe, I don't know, farmers, and even farmers are super technical.
They're super technical.
You just don't know.
They're like automated crop collectors.
Oh, yeah.
Or I don't know what the words are, but it's all automated now.
Watering. Yeah, it is. And that's so. So I feel like it's a loaded question. Can you do DevRel and be not technical? No, because you're already technical. You just don't consider yourself that way. That's my argument.
I feel like I poked one of PJ's nerves there, and I'm happy. I enjoyed the diatribe. I like that you asked if you could swear, and then the word you used was ludicrous. I want to know what the real swear word was. But Wesley, you have some thoughts.
I was going to say that there are entire Twitter threads about how people who come from non-traditional backgrounds are some of the best at relating content to multiple groups because of their different ways of coming into technology. And so it's almost like there's a lot of prominent people who have come from a theater background or have been school teachers or worked with the elderly or come from a visual arts background. So like they can find different mediums to communicate. There's also a huge portion of it where you do need to not just bring the technical content, but you need to bring yourself, right? And so personality and quirks or things that make you unique are also a part of the role, because sometimes when you're speaking on some things that are just pretty much commodified, that je ne sais quoi is the person who's bringing you that message. So it's part of the thing of like not only explaining a concept, but making people want to hear it from the person who's speaking. So I think if you have one of those diverse backgrounds where you have a lot of world experience, life experience, or just a different experience, I think that actually is a giant plus.
Yeah, I definitely think that's much more important than I have 6 years of engineering as a developer or whatever, is the ability to actually communicate ideas and present them in a palatable way with sincerity. I will say I think there are people in this profession who aren't sincere. I'm not gonna act like everybody who's a dev advocate who's ever gotten on a stage or written a piece of content or done a Twitch stream is like, going to be this humble, super awesome, sincere person. I know that I have an ego. I totally understand that. I get it, but I'm sincere about it. When you're not sincere, when you're just up there trying to sell, people smell it and they don't want it. And that what I think puts like a dark cast on our profession and what we do.
Yeah, I think it's hard when you want anyone who's building community to have intuition for the needs and the culture of that community and the pain that they have, and ideally an empathy. But I think the point that you're both making is you can develop an empathy and an understanding if you're just genuinely curious about the space and you want to learn and you're willing to ask questions and you care about the people. You like having experience working as a developer is not the only way to gain that empathy and intuition for the community.
Exactly. I think well said. I think empathy is the key phrase there, and I think that there's certain folks who I think this is an Instagram job of fly into exotic location, do talk, leave, or write piece of content, put it up on dev.to and never look at the comments ever again. That's not how this works. As Wesley pointed out several times, and I totally agree, our job is communication. Communication is two-way. It has to have at least two people talking. And if it's really good, there's a lot more than two.
Love it. What is the state right now of working in DevRel in what to me seems like a time where developer attention is at an all-time premium? And it seems like there's countless communities, countless products trying to vie for developers to get excited about their project and get involved. And PJ, you joked about NFTs, but Web3 is something that's coming up fast and is very developer driven.
Is it though?
Oh, we're gonna open up that box. All right, I'm down.
Web3 is just a way to say, hey, poor people, please pay for the rich people internet.
We could talk about that, but before we do, I'm just curious about has it been really hard lately to get developers to engage, and how do you think about building community in a space where everyone's attention is in such high demand?
It reminds me of, 2008 during the economic crash. There were, before that, a lot of money you can grab and just buy a house, and like anyone who wanted a house could get one. And so the whole market was flush with people in real estate. And everyone was, if you had a license, you made money. It was just almost a guarantee. You could just print money. And then the crash happened and the recession happened, and everybody who didn't adapt, who didn't mold to the current conditions, and only knew what the rote plan was of how to make the commit to the sale, they started washing out. And there were some people who adapted, and there were some people who had some bad luck, and there were some people who were lucky. And I think that's where, in this pandemic, where the amount of online chatter and attention like seeking, and then targeted ads and virtual webinars. All of that's happening right now. And it's a cacophony of a lot of different noise or signal, depending on who you are. And you started seeing more live streaming. I mentioned that before. You started seeing more podcasts, and people are like, let's find a way to have either get to the people who need to find us, or allow people who are interested in this topic to find our content. And so there are different ways of doing that. I would say like Develo is a really great community of people where we are able to lean on each other and help find those people, foster those communications, and do a little nudge and a wink when we see something that's taking hold. And the same thing about things that are that is devaluing the community and that we probably should not do anymore. So the state of it is that those of us who've been doing it for a while and are already connected in these meta communities of developers and developer relations have been able to like listen and just hear what they want and hear how they want it. And those who are new coming in, it's much harder. It's much harder to find that community, understand who's valued and validated in those communities, because anyone can be in developer relations these days by just changing your name on LinkedIn, your title in LinkedIn. So, but understanding like what are some of the first principles of developer relations and how do we keep going back to there, and that it is a true strategy and not 100% tactics like some job descriptions say. So you do need to have a really good grasp of both to be able to survive right now.
Yeah, I agree 100% with everything that Wesley said. I think that's the key to understand. Like we are trying to build signal through the noise, and it is tough because we're coming out of a pandemic. But at the same time, I think that we have an evolving set of communities where maybe what I would have valued as a developer in, back during that back in 2008, what I would value then is not what the average, 20, 30 something developer would value now. Maybe it's no longer long form written content in the form of books. Maybe it's more of the blog post kind of situation, or maybe it's easier for people to ingest Twitch streams because they can take a few minutes. And I also think that the way that we present it is, a lot less dry. When you look at people like, Joe Carlson or Cassidy, who are doing like comedic references, but they're still teaching people. Like there's just so many different ways to do it. And I think that it's not so much noise as we've realized that there's different paths to getting the message across, and you're hitting a different group with each kind of format. And that's where the value lies. It's not that we're bombarding people. It's just that, people need to realize that there's different ways to get the content out there, and there's different ways to receive it. So receive it the way you want.
Yeah, it makes sense. When there's this kind of rush to grab the attention of developers, and for a while there were more developers maybe than companies trying to reach them, and it was like a relatively easy thing to do. But now that there's so much demand for their attention, and not as many developers to necessarily go around, it just requires a lot more intention and specificity in how you connect with people, which is true for every industry, right? Whether it was for real estate or any space that becomes really big and hot, when there's an abundance of content or community, it just makes the quality matter that much more, because simply just being there isn't enough. Cool. One last question, and then I want to move into our rapid fire question round. PJ, you started this developer relations as a service, and it got me thinking about something I've talked a lot about in community with different groups, and people seem to have different opinions on, like, can you outsource community? Is that something that you should be outsourcing as a business? So I'm curious to hear from you. I imagine what you're going to say is, well, yeah, some things can be outsourced and some things you really want to own and have in-house. I'm curious where that line is for you. What are the things that should be in-house, and what are things that can be outsourced? I'm curious to hear from you as well on that, Wesley.
I actually think that I think that everything can be outsourced. I think that if you find the right agency, the right organization, the right set of contractors, generally you're looking for people who understand the communities you're working with or who are participants in the communities you want to work with. There's nothing you can't outsource. DevRel is not generally there to share the internal secrets of the business logic of what the product is or what the founders want. We're there to share the message of what we're trying to do. So I think, as far as that goes, you're reaching out. Any way that you can find to reach out is good, as long as the organization you find, values the same value sets that you have. Which, for Dev Relays, we value communities, we value interaction, we value communication. How you'd like to do that, we are willing to help you in any way. I think the only line is when it comes to some of the internal stuff. It's more difficult to have a contractor give feedback to an engineering team when that contractor doesn't really work for the company. Sometimes some teams aren't really cool with receiving that kind of feedback. There's no reason why you can't do it. It's just going to be a little more difficult. But as long as you go into it with that understanding, I don't think there's anything that outsourced community managers, developer advocates, there's nothing they can't do, just as if you have them in-house.
What comes to mind for me, and I want to hear from you, Wesley, is that the practical or tactical components of community are certainly okay to outsource, of we need to collect this information, we need to moderate these spaces, we need to have a presence at these events, whatever it is. But there's similar to what you just said, of a contractor not having the same ability to influence internally, I think comes from a belief around, if you're in-house full-time, you are really bought in, invested, you are embodying the company, you're in it for the long run. Whereas something that's contracted out, it's more transactional. It maybe feels less emotionally aligned. And so if I'm talking to one of you and you're a contractor representing a product, is that going to feel different than if I'm talking to you and I know you're, a full-time employee representing that product? What's your take on it, Wesley?
I think that very much depends on the company that's hiring this contractor and the contractor and what they're allowed to do. Because sometimes you have these contracts that have very strict SOWs where they can only work in this confines. But like I mentioned, the example of the pandemic, where things might need to change on the dime, that might need to be rewritten or reconsidered. But I agree with PJ when you can say a contractor can do all functions, but you also have to make sure that you, as the employer, as the client, that you enable the contractor to do some of the things that are needed. Like, for instance, saying that your baby's ugly. You have to say, this is really a big problem and needs to be fixed. And if there's a power dynamic where that type of feedback is no longer okay, and you're just going to fire the contractor, or those are the way that you take in feedback and respond to it is really allows you to have that open line of communication where you can have these hard decisions that need to be made, or I really know that you want to make fun of X competitor, but you need to hold off. That's not the best way to play this. You have to be able to say no and give the contractor that ability to really give the feedback that is needed unfettered in order for it to actually be super effective.
Is there an element of the strategy should be owned internally, but the execution of that strategy can be outsourced, or do you both believe that strategy could actually be outsourced as well? A company can just say we don't know what to do with community, we're just going to outsource the whole thing, planning beginning to end, to someone else.
I think you could 100% outsource the strategy. Because a lot of times in the beginning, it's going to be very similar anyway. It's almost cookie cutter when people are we just don't know. We know there's a community out there we want to interact with. We just don't know how to do it. Well, then, you need to bring a contractor in and have them sit down and have you understand who it is, what it is you want to do, and narrow that down. Contract, especially in DevRel space, very big on bringing them in and helping you understand that. Because again, a lot of times, when you come in and you're hey, not necessarily you have an ugly baby, you have a great baby, but knows that your baby exists. How do we share this? That's something that sometimes you need the outside perspective, because as a founder, you might not understand what that is.
Yeah. Here, take a piece of baby.
Here, have a little baby. Have a little baby. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're getting to the end of the podcast here, and it's about to get dark real fast. Maybe we should switch to the rapid fire round before we get into the dead baby jokes. I love a good dead baby joke, so if you want to just keep doing that, I'm down for that too. And I have a baby.
Let's see how the rapid fire round goes first.
All right. We're going to go into rapid fire round. You guys ready? I'm going to ask the questions normal speed, and you're going to answer them rapidly.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, you got it. And some of them I'll have for both of you. I have a couple just for you individually. All right, first one for both of you. PJ, why don't you go first? What's your favorite book to give as a gift to others or to recommend to others?
Ooh, I would probably say the Foundation series, not the TV series, but Foundation series. Okay, that's you. Okay, Mary Thangval's The Business Value of Developer Relations.
That was the correct answer. Yes, good job. Mary was a past guest here. Very big fan of Mary here on Masters of Community. Wesley, what's your favorite book? You can't say Mary's now because PJ
you blew it.
Took that from you.
The one that I'm recommending right now that everyone read is called Just Work. And if you're familiar with the candid conversation,
Radical Candor.
About it. The name of it. No, Radical Candor. Yeah, it's the same author who does Radical Candor. She made this.
Kim Scott, right?
Just Work, and it's amazing. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, she spoke at the last in-person CMX summit, actually, which was delightful. Nice. Radical Candor was one of my favorite books. Great recommendation. All right, next question. Wesley, why don't you take this one first? What's one guest that you've had on your podcast that made you change your mind about something, and what did they make you change your mind about?
I would say Bear from Slack. Her perspective on metrics was very enlightening to me. We had she kind of turned the tables and put us on the hot seat on our own podcasts. And I would say that just the way that she thought about segmenting her budget actually made me rethink some things.
What's her last name again? I know you're talking about Bear.
I'm blanking on her last name. I'm bad with names. I'm horrible with names.
Everybody knows who Bear is.
But
all right.
If you literally look up Bear Slack, yes.
Yes, Bear Douglas. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Great. And I love it when guests turn it around on you and start grilling you. But thank you for not doing that today, especially since you're podcast hosts. It was a big risk.
We're not done yet.
Anyway, PJ, who's one guest that you had that changed your mind about something, and what did they change your mind about?
Yeah, I think it was Elizabeth Kinsey. We were doing I'd written an article, I think in late 2019, about developer marketing and developer relations developer marketing and developer advocacy not being the same thing. Same goal, different tactics, kind of idea. You can't compare apples and oranges when someone brings in a banana. And she came in and she really showed me the value of developer marketing, because a lot of times people are eschewing marketing like, that's, used car salespeople, like whatever. They just have one way of doing things. They don't adjust for time. But she really showed me that caring about developers and marketing to developers, developing that messaging and understanding how to talk to developers is key, and it's important. So in reality, it's not that we should be working with different means towards the same end. It's that we should be working hand in hand to understand how better to communicate with communities.
Love it.
So Elizabeth Kinsey, shout out to her.
Elizabeth Kinsey, another past guest here on Masters of Community. Awesome person. You both chose people who work at Slack. So apparently if you want to have your mind changed about something, go talk to someone who works at Slack.
Well, I mean, go to Mattermost first. I'm legally obligated to say that.
Right.
Go to Mattermost first,
t-shirt,
then go talk to it. Yeah. I am the t-shirt in essence.
Oh, I like that. You should wear a t-shirt that says that. All right, I have one specifically for you, Wesley. You've said that community shapes us. To what extent do you feel that we are shaped by our communities versus being ones that shape the communities around us?
Oh, wow.
That went deep.
That's deep. Yeah, this is a slow lightning. So it's a weird feedback loop where sometimes like we bring the selves that we think will be accepted, and so that shows what the community should be and how we are trying to present it to them, and then vice versa, the community reacts to what we present. And then we get a feedback cycle based on what they think they should be doing, and then we react to that as an acceptable manner. So it's a very symbiotic relationship between us and the community, and I think that's how we shape the community and how the community shapes us. That's a very complicated answer because it's more than just like community, how we've been talking about it now, but it's from our friends, our family, our school groups, our any
our
type
kids.
of new meetup. Yeah, it's everyone, and because that's how we relate to each other as humans.
Love it. Yeah, it makes me think of the sense of community theory from David McMillan and Chavez, where it's like the exchange of influence. You have to feel like you have influence over the community, but the community also has to have influence over you. And so your identity is changing the social identity, but the social identity is also changing your personal identity. Fun stuff.
And it's a state of flux where you're all trying to reach equilibrium.
Yeah, love it. All right, PJ, you once said that community doesn't come to you. You have to go to the community. What tips do you have for applying this advice on how to meet your community where they're at?
I think that it's kind of right there in the answer. Go to where they are. If your community primarily communicates on IRC, join the IRC channel. If they, happen to be, you have a big, heavy influence in the Midwest, go to all the Midwest conferences, meetups, and events. Find out where they are. Go and talk to these people. If the conversation's happening on Stack Overflow, be there. Be on Twitter. Be everywhere that the community is happening and talk to them like people. Have human conversations. And I'm not just talking about go to where the community is, but also like bring yourself to the level of the community. If you're in a highly technical community, try to find out how to get to the level of that level of communication, but also understand that these are human beings. Like what informed them, what brought them to being who they are? What is it about them? Like, yeah, maybe you want to talk to developers. Maybe you specifically want to talk to open source developers. But what else interests them? Maybe they play guitar. Maybe they're into karaoke. Maybe they like, fighting games, or they're into Halo, whatever. Communicate to people as humans, and you endear yourself. You become a part of that community. That's how you go to the community. It's not just reaching out. It's also jumping in the pool.
I love that. So it's not just the location or the platform. It's literally like meeting them where they're at culturally.
Right.
Love it. All right, next question. What's a go-to community engagement or conversation starter that you like to use in your communities? PJ, why don't you take this one first?
Ooh, I think one of my big things is like, hey, what brought you here? It's not always, that you're there for the tech. Sometimes, somebody said this was a cool place to be and I wanted to check it out. Or someone said this was a cool piece of technology and I want to check it out. What brought you here? What got you started? What got you interested? It's kind of like it's the where you're from, or do you drop by here often of community openers in my mind. What brought you here? What made you decide to do this thing today?
Love it. Wesley, what's yours?
Mine is, what do you think? There is like, what do you think about this, where we are? What do you think about this conversation? What do you think of the people here? Like, what is your grade for whatever?
What do you think about
that
my
we're
t-shirt
experiencing at the moment? Yeah. Like,
what do you think about Web3?
I use it
just don't ask that to PJ.
I use it at events all the time. Like if I'm at some conference or something, I say, so what do you think? How's it been for you? What is your experience so far? And it gets people evaluating, thinking, and then processing. Because one, it gets them talking, and two, if you ask enough people there, then you can start actually getting a thread between all these conversations that it's easier to digest.
I'll add to that. That's also as a parent, that's a great, just a little slight intonation when your kid comes to you and they're like, what's coronavirus? Well, what do you think?
Yeah.
And find out what they want to actually know, because chances are the first question isn't where it's at.
Yes. I love it. Good parenting tip. Noted. My kid can't talk yet, but saved it in the repository. Yeah. All right. Next question. What is the weirdest community you've ever been a part of?
Ooh, I got this one. Super easy. During COVID, sporting events obviously went away for a while. So I started to get really into Yella's Marble League. It's literally like, so you could watch it on YouTube. They have events. There are teams. We have t-shirts and jerseys at our house. Yella's Marble League, that's spelled with a J, where they race marbles down different marble tracks. And it's just really cool and fun. Like each episode's like 10 minutes long. It's not a huge investment in time, but we did get to the point where we did join the GoFundMe for the video game version of it. Just because it's such an enjoy, but interesting community, because like there are people, they are really into like Lego built tracks for marbles, and then you race the marbles, and like there's stop motion animation, there's an announcer. It's very exciting, and it's a ridiculous community. Definitely one of the weirdest things I've ever been a part of.
Love it. Great example. I think I might have seen one or two of those on TikTok at some point. It seemed very
I don't
weird.
doubt it.
All right, Wesley, what's the weirdest community you've ever been a part of?
The weirdest community that I was a part of was in college. I joined. I majored in electrical computer engineering, and I joined a engineering fraternity. And that was super weird.
Sounds weird.
There was a lot of awkward people there.
They sound like opposite words.
Yes, and so I was at that present time, while I was like a recruit or a pledge for that fraternity. I was the president of Delta Upsilon, which is like a legit fraternity at the time. And being part of this engineering fraternity, it was them doing what they thought fraternities did.
Wait, so was it like this 80s movie, the 80s movie Revenge of the Nerds? Was it like that?
It was similar, yes. It's as if that was their study material. And I would say that was the weirdest fraternity, because they would just like try to haze us. And I'm like, what?
Do this math problem.
Yeah. And then like
I'm just imagining like
do a lot of things around alcohol
tables and like beer bongs that talk to you and are voice activated.
Sounds like the average.
They were not that put together. Yeah. And so that was the weirdest community that I was a part of. And dropped out.
Good one.
Couldn't handle the hazing, huh, Wesley?
No, I couldn't handle the disrespect, actually. Yeah,
Fair enough. All right, last question. If you were to find yourself on your deathbed today and you had to condense all of your life lessons that you've collected into one Twitter-sized piece of advice for the rest of the world on how to live, what would that advice be?
Remember, everybody's human, so try to be kind to each other. Do your best.
Yeah, mine would be similar. It would be like, you are the best version of you. Stick with that. And if you look at yourself and you feel that you could be better, do better.
If you feel like you could be better, do better. And everybody's human.
Retweet.
Very tweetable.
Deathbed statement.
Yeah.
Love it. You have
David, is this how you get all your tweets?
Mostly, yeah. Yeah, none of them are original. It all comes from the rapid fire round. I can't wait to post about the engineering.
He just cuts that part off the end of the podcast. And he's like, all right, well, there's my tweets for the week. I'm good to
Never heard that on the podcast in my life.
No idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we are at the end. So just super, super grateful for you taking the time to chat with me and share your wisdom. And I learned a lot about DevRel today. Hopefully everyone here did too. Lastly, where can people go to continue to learn from you, to subscribe to your podcast, and find out about all the things that you're working on?
Well, I mean, the podcast is definitely communitypulse.io, at community_pulse on Twitter. I am at Asplenic on Twitter. That's ASPLEENIC. Because I lost my spleen when I was 19. It's a whole long story. If you want to tweet at me about that, tweet at me about that. Feel free to email me, pj@devrelate.io or pj@mattermost.com. I'm always happy to talk about just about anything. As Wesley will tell you, the trick is getting me to shut up.
I'm Wesley Faulkner. I'm Wesley83 pretty much everywhere. I have Wesley83 on LinkedIn and Wesley83 on Twitter, but I strongly urge people not to send me messages on LinkedIn. If you really want to talk to me, my DMs are open on Twitter, so that's the best place to find me. Of course, I'm on Community Pulse with PJ and Mary Thingvall, SJ Morris, and of course, Jason Hand, who helped start this whole thing. If you want to track my work, of course, you can go to SingleStore Devs, which is like a handle that I help with curation, some of the topics there. But I have one of the newest things that happens that's taking the developer advocate community by storm, which is I have my own Polywork site. And so if you go to wesleyfaulkner.com, I should say www.wesleyfaulkner.com, you can see all my work there, and any podcast. And I guess this podcast will actually show up there too.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening in. We'll see you next time.